Pajni Lacey, and I will be moderating this session. And I'm so glad to welcome Megan Palmer, Rachel Keiko Stark, Maggie Albro, and Jenessa McElfresh, and they will be presenting You Can't Sit With Us, Navigating Bullying and Incivility in Your Library. So before we get started, we're just going to go over a few logistical items. So this session is being recorded. Captions are available during the session by clicking on the live CC button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And thank you so much to Danielle for providing these. Please use the Q&A feature for any presentation questions. You can choose to do this anonymously, and there will be 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And Joanna, please use the chat for general comments or technical issues. Joanna Kimmett will be monitoring the chat for any questions and comments. And Joanna will also be adding some links into the chat. One is for a collaborative resource sharing. If you think of a related reading or podcast, video, or something else, please share it with us in Calm's recommended resources shared Zotero. And then I'm also just going to post the link to our conference code of conduct. So I will now turn things over to our presenters.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to You Can't Sit With Us, Navigating Bullying and Incivility in Your Library. When thinking through themes for this presentation, we thought the Mean Girls theme would help to exemplify some of the things happening in libraries and how it can make someone feel. And we also wanted to say that we wear pink on presentation days, for those that get the reference. I'm Megan Palmer, and I'm an assessment librarian at Clemson University.
Hi, my name is Rachel Keiko Stark, and I'm the Health Sciences Librarian at Sacramento State University.
Maggie Albro, and I'm the Agriculture and Natural Resources Librarian at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville.
And I'm Jenessa McElfresh. I'm the Senior Research and Learning Services Librarian here at the University of Tennessee Health Sciences Center.
So why are we talking about bullying? As many as 46% of librarians across all different types of libraries have experienced bullying at work. Each of the presenters today came together because of our experiences that we've had that caused us to investigate whether what happened to us was an isolated incident or whether this is a more common theme within libraries. What we found is that it is common in libraries, although it hasn't been well documented or researched. We've presented on this topic several times over the last few years, and we've even published a book chapter for mid-career librarians on how they can be change agents in combating bullying and incivility. We are really excited to accept, to be able to come and present this topic at the Calm conference, because our next step was talking directly to library managers on ways that they can transform their libraries and the library profession into one of empowerment and civility. So for today's agenda, first we're going to be talking about some definitions. It's really important that we have a shared vocabulary so that you can understand the different terms that we're talking about. The next part is lessons from the literature. So there are some research in libraries about bullying and incivility, but we were specifically looking at different interventions. We were just finishing up a scoping review, and with our scoping review, we didn't find any research that talked about specific interventions that libraries have used to combat bullying and incivility. So we're going to talk extensively about some of the interventions that we found from the nursing literature. Then we're going to talk about some action items. So what are ways that we can address and mitigate negative acts happening in your library? And lastly, what is your role as a manager to create a nonviolent workplace?
Okay, well, I'll take it over from here with some of our definitions about our terms relating to workplace violence. Starting with a shared vocabulary is going to help even the playing field for everyone so that we all know what these different terms are, the differences in the different types of workplace violence, and how they kind of come together in libraries to create some situations I'm sure that we all don't love to experience, but may have had our own experiences with. So we're going to start with some very general definitions relating to workplace violence. You might have heard the term lateral violence before. This can sometimes be used synonymously with bullying, but they are different concepts because we're referring to the types of abuse that is happening in a workplace among people in different power positions. Whenever we say lateral violence, we're talking about the abuse of an employee via means that are physical, verbal, emotional, and are identified between two people of the same rank or status. So lateral violence is between two people from the same level of the hierarchy. When we talk about vertical violence, we're complicating this narrative. We're still talking about the abuse of an employee through physical, verbal, and emotional means. However, this is between employees of different ranks in a hierarchy. Libraries are intrinsically hierarchical structures, whether you're from public, academic, or other backgrounds. Having that power in place, having established power structures can also be signs and give people cause for workplace violence. Now, our next definitions, we're going to go more in depth into what these bullying terms mean. So we say incivility, we say bullying. What are the differences between these two concepts? Bullying is probably the term most people are familiar with. This is a pattern of intentional, deliberate, and consistent negative acts and behaviors that escalate over time. Again, the keywords we want to pull out here are intentionality, there's deliberation, and there's consistency in these negative acts that are escalating over time. This has a longer time component, often defined by at least 6 months of these negative actions. Bullying is also defined by the relationship persistent behavior and a power differential. So again, we're talking those horizontal lines and our vertical lines, and those can either be the formal ones that come with our institutions or informal ones. Different rankings, different dates of hire, these can all contribute to our bullying behaviors because it is defined as relationships between individuals. Now, incivility compared to bullying has a few things that are different. Incivility is rude, discourteous behavior that can be intentional or unintentional. It's generally habitual of the person inflicting the negative behavior rather than habitual based on a relationship. And it's practiced selectively in violation of the forms for respect in a social interaction. So it might not be an always behavior. It might not be an intentional behavior, but this is a situation involving workplace incivility, workplace violence that is leading to negative outcomes for other individuals. When we talk about mobbing, we are talking about bigger things than a one-on-one relationship. Mobbing refers to when more than two individuals participate in inflicting the negative behavior on a single person. This falls under bullying behaviors as they're taking place often and over a long period of time of at least 6 months. So whenever we get into more of our clique behaviors, whenever we're talking about groups mobilizing against one individual, groups mobilizing against a different group of individuals, that's where our mobbing falls into place. Now, here are some examples in libraries. These definitions mean a lot on paper. We try to describe them. We try to go into depth about a formal definition. But when it comes down to it, this is what these behaviors break down to. Bullying can be gossiping or spreading rumors, undermining a different employee's work intentionally, withholding information from certain individuals, or making offensive jokes. Of course, this isn't the full list of behaviors. We could go on and on. But these are some of the more common examples you might recognize from your own experiences or workplace. Incivility can be something like asking for input and then being ignored, making accusations about professional competence, sending demeaning notes, or forgetting to share the credit on things. Mobbing can look like persistent criticism from a group, consistent ignoring of an individual by a group, or laying blame for behaviors from the mob without facts. There are other forms of workplace violence that we could get into: threatening behaviors, pranks, theft, property damage, and sabotage. Today, we're mostly focusing on interpersonal behaviors, the ways that individuals are acting for or against each other. However, I do want to know if behaviors are getting into this other category, we're talking about civil rights issues. And at that point, we're talking about bigger things than interventions we can implement on our own. So in the nursing research, we're going to talk a lot about nursing research today because there is so much interventions, really great research practice onto bullying behaviors. We've taken some of those workplace personas and transformed them into the librarian bully types. This was from an article on nursing again, but we've transferred it over to librarian bully types. I think sometimes whenever we're looking at bullying, we have in our head this very stereotypical HBO Max documentary style aggressive behavior. But sometimes our librarian bullies are just like any other colleague. Some of our librarian bullies might be super librarians. These are individuals who are very experienced and specialized and knowledgeable in the field. But because of this, they're condescending to their coworkers with elitist attitudes and corrective comments meant to belittle or deride. Now, on the other side of our super librarians, we have our resentful librarians. Regardless of experience or skill set, these are individuals who are holding grudges against their fellow librarians, their other employees, and the institution itself. We have cliquish librarians. These individuals are using exclusion as a form of aggression. These groups are showing favoritism to those who are within the group while ignoring others, creating an us versus them dynamic. Your clique might not be actively engaging in overt aggression towards other individuals, but by excluding others just in general, it's a bullying behavior. And then there are two-faced librarians. These are individuals who are playing a power game all of their own. They are cultivating fake alliances that might be betrayed, and they're wielding information as a weapon to increase their own standing at the detriment of others. Taking a minute to look at these four types, there are many, many others. Taking a minute to look at these though, I think we can all identify some patterns that we may have seen or experienced. Maybe we've fallen into these roles at times, but being able to identify them helps us take a step back, look at the actions, and understand them for what they really are. Okay, and our approach to this falls into the category of evidence-based practice. This is really important as we're going along. Several of us are health sciences librarians, and so evidence-based practice is a big umbrella that we use to define our approach to research and decision-making. Established back in 1996, evidence-based practice is formally the integration of expert opinion and experience, internal and external evidence, this is normally research, and user values to make informed decisions and create inclusive library environments. We wanted to bring this up in our definitions to give a big picture approach to the research that we've done and why we think it's important. Your takeaways from this are going to be different from the other person next to you in this session. There's a mere 326 of us. So we've got 326 approaches to combating bullying, because what we're saying, maybe the expert opinion and experience is one side of the coin. The research we're bringing in is another side of the coin. And somehow my analogy, I've got three sides on this coin. And one of the sides is your own institutional values and practices. What's going to work in your institution is going to be different from what works in my institution. So take what we found, take all of these things with this knowledge that it's falling into an EBP bubble. There's no one tried and true approach, but all of the sides of our EBP bubble are equal. Your culture, your institution is just as important as some of the research that we found. So if something doesn't work for you, think about why it might need to be changed for your institution and what culture that's helping to support. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Maggie. We'll get into the good stuff now.
Alrighty, friends. Hello. I'm here today to talk to you a bit about lessons from the literature. So before we get into what we found, I just want to tell you a bit about how we got there, because I think it's important to be transparent in this process. So we started out trying to conduct a scoping review, looking at both library and nursing literature to find interventions that were evidence-based, that were effective. Now, I believe Megan mentioned earlier, we did not find any library interventions that were studied in the literature. So we are pulling heavily from nursing today. And we are pulling heavily from nursing for a couple of reasons that we'll get into in a bit. But we combed through a bunch of articles. We did a comprehensive search in a number of databases. The four of us all reviewed every single article, multiple rounds, title abstract review, full text review, to determine what was fit for inclusion to present to you all today. And the big thing I want to say that I really want to hammer home is there's a real lack of research on bullying interventions in libraries. We're hearing more and more stories. It seems like everybody you talk to has some sort of story that they can share about bullying, about incivility, about some sort of workplace violence that has occurred. Some of these stories are making headlines. Some of them are just circulating, sorry, tongue-tied there, circulating among the people and communities that we have within our own librarianship circles. So today we really want to call attention to this gap in the literature and start encouraging folks to talk about it more, explore it more, and share what is working in your library. If you have a solution in your library that's working, go ahead and write it up, share it with the community, and let us all learn together and crowdsource what can work to make some meaningful changes in our places of work. So I did mention we are pulling very heavily from the nursing literature. All of our interventions today came from the nursing literature. And this is because the nursing literature is so easy to translate to librarianship. If you've heard us speak on this topic before, you may be tired of hearing about the similarities between nursing and librarianship, but you're going to hear about them again today. So in both fields, there's strong evidence-based practice. We look to the literature, we look to the research, we look to our culture, and we decide what we're going to do. Both of our fields are predominantly made up by female identifying persons, and males have access in these fields to the class elevator. So they're going to skyrocket among the ranks and head to the top. We see a lot of males in administration in both nursing and in libraries. Both nursing and librarianship are service-oriented professions. We in librarianship talk a lot about vocational awe, which is something that we see a lot in nursing as well. And they're both going to consist of varied roles and settings. There's public, there's private, there's academic, there's hospital. There's all these different types of configurations and different types of structures that make each individual workplace unique. Every workplace, as Jenessa mentioned, is going to take a different approach. It's going to have a slightly different solution that needs to be custom tailored for it. And that's the same with nursing. So when we pull from this literature, we're getting some of those varied approaches. We're hearing a lot of, we did X type of program, but here's our unique twist for our unique scenario. Both fields also were going to make use of a wide range of educational requirements. The basic, we typically see a bachelor's or master's in nursing and librarianship, but sometimes we see people straight out of high school. Sometimes we see people with PhDs. There's a huge range in there of educational degrees, a huge range of job roles. And so we're able to make some connections based on this variance among the populations. So we originally found, it was over 1,000 articles, but we narrowed it down to 22. It was 800, Jenessa? Jenessa's nodding at me. Yes, we found 800 some odd articles. And so through our applying of these filters, and our application of criteria, we narrowed it down to 22 articles that were published between 2004 and 2021, all on interventions in a healthcare settings. So 15 of these studies were quantitative in nature. Mostly they made use of pre-test, post-test type structures. We found 3 review articles, 3 mixed method studies, and 1 purely qualitative study. So we are seeing, again, a lot of that pre-test, post-test type scenario in the studies that we examined. We found that education was the most popular of the interventions. 14 of the studies made use of education. 9 of these studies included some form of cognitive rehearsal training, which we'll get into a bit deeper in a minute. 4 of the studies included multiple interventions. 2 used the civility, respect, and engagement in the workplace model that has been developed previously. And 2 studies involved electronic delivery. You'll notice our total here does not equal 22. Again, that is to account for some of the multiple modalities in some of the studies and some of the unique aspects like electronic delivery was frequently related to an educational model. So our key findings, again, original research on lateral and horizontal violence is really needed in librarianship. If you have an interest in this, start taking a look at your surroundings, at other people's surroundings, and sharing what you're finding. We found that managers are playing a pivotal role in bullying prevention and response. Managers are in a position of power where they're able to make some changes, and we'll talk a bit specifically later on about the unique things that managers can do to make a change. But managers do play such a strong role in shaping the culture of their organization. Policy also comes into play here. Anti-bullying policies are going to be necessary for every library. End of discussion. That policy may look different from library to library. It's got to be crafted with input of the people in your library, but that policy needs to be in place in order for bullying to be reduced. Educational interventions can make that huge difference. Again, the bulk of our studies tested educational interventions, and they tested them with the pre-test, post-test in terms of both knowledge of bullying and actual negative acts experienced in the workplace. And we're showing that those educational interventions are leading to change. There also needs to be this layer of accountability, just permeating through the workplace. Managers, administrators, and just everyday employee must all be accountable for their actions. So we need to see it at every level. And we need to see a commitment. Conversations on bullying need to be a regular occurrence. You can't just have a one-off discussion, training, whole library meeting. Guys, we're going to stop bullying today, and then walk away and leave it at that. If only it were that easy to make such a lasting change. But as people are coming in and out of our organizations, as the structures of our institutions are changing, as administration is getting wild ideas from above. Everything's going to constantly be adjusting. So we need to constantly be tweaking it, having new conversations, looking at what is going on currently, not just what happened in the past and what can happen in our future, and keep making those adjustments and making this apparent that bullying is not okay. We're not going to accept it now. We're not going to accept it tomorrow, and keep having those conversations. Because we need to make these changes, because bullying can have such a huge impact on careers and our fields of librarianship in general. Our studies are showing absenteeism and turnover are related to bullying. Frequent absenteeism and turnover impacts workloads. It impacts our ability to provide consistent library services. And if you're in an environment where bullying is happening, you're more likely to leave or consider leaving or call out because you can't bring yourself to go to work and face the trauma that is happening to you on a regular basis. Power structures inherent in our evaluation, promotion, tenure structures, depending on your library, your mileage may vary, but these power structures make speaking out a particular challenge, and they give the power to the people who have been at the institution longest. So we need to be aware when we're speaking to bullying solutions, when we're assessing what is our library's culture related to bullying, what are the differences between those at the least power heavy end of the spectrum and those who have the power to make effective change. There's a phrase in nursing literature that pops up a lot where nurses eat their young. And we believe this may be happening in librarianship. Enmeshed behaviors are going to cause continued negative acts, trauma, retaliation, complex PTSD, the works. We are putting our new librarians through the ringer. We are expecting them to come out the other side stronger for it, but it's a culture that's perpetuating these negative acts and teaching them the only way to survive is to start doing this to others. And again, we're seeing a huge loss of librarians, especially our BIPOC librarians, to other fields. Librarianship skills transfer very easily. And if a librarian is being bullied and can easily make the hop to another field where the anti-bullying culture is stronger, that's going to be really, really tempting to make that leap. So now I'm going to hand things over to Rachel, who's going to talk a bit more about what we found and how to actually turn it into something actionable.
Hello, yes, thank you. So as mentioned, I will be discussing some action items. Again, this is heavily based in the nursing literature. We are very thankful that our nursing colleagues have done such a wonderful job doing evidence-based practice, and we hope that some of the materials that we discussed today will be helpful to you in your particular situation and with the people that you work with. So we mentioned before that policies are incredibly important, and the research does support this. Policies serve not only as a way to bring people to a common understanding, hence why we talk about definitions, but they also make it clear what the expectations are for behavior in the work environment. This is particularly important with a concept such as bullying, which, as we mentioned, can be inclusive of many horrible acts and can be more further defined. It can also be important for people who don't understand what they're doing is a negative behavior to identify that. And having a policy in place, particularly one that's actually supported and enforced, helps to create active changes in a work environment. So as mentioned, policy should contain definitions to create a shared understanding. Ideally, a good policy incorporates input from all members of the library workforce, and a policy should cover many different people's experience and reflect the unique nature of your institution. If there is a policy for a campus-wide anti-bullying or anti-lateral violence, that's something that maybe the library could build on. It has been noted in the literature that having input from all members of the team is critical for buy-in and to ensure that everyone has a shared understanding. Without that shared understanding, policies can be very ineffective. And without an understanding from all levels, policies are often unevenly implied and unevenly useful to members of different parts of the hierarchical structure. Again, pulling from the nursing research, we assume that this would work in libraries. And we hope if anyone has done this, that you'll publish about it so that we can determine whether or not our theory is correct. Education programs, as mentioned in previous slide, were the most common form of intervention. They should incorporate awareness of what bullying is, provide examples, and educate employees about what they do when they see bullying. As we've done in our presentation, we want to create a shared language so that everyone is on the same page and people can play from different field, or sorry, people can play on the same even field. We want to provide examples because even though we might have shared definitions, having those examples grounds this in people's actual experiences and ensures that people can see visually or in their mind what that means. Without examples, it can be very difficult for people to truly understand, particularly if they are unaware that they are perpetrating these kinds of negative acts. The education concept is also important. It should not be punitive. This should be ideally, again, based on our research, something that everyone is invited to and that people are encouraged to attend. If it's something that is seen as building something, then people are more likely to participate. And the research has indications that by building something, people are more likely to continue forward with what they learned through their education. Excuse me. Specifically, cognitive rehearsal is a form of educational intervention that has been highly documented in the literature and seems to have relatively good outcomes. Again, it is, of course, unique to each individual's situation and each institution, but there are many examples of different institutions utilizing this framework. So generally, you start with the education piece, which is you learn to recognize what is bullying behavior. And then the important part here is to also understand the consequences, because it's one thing to recognize the behavior and it's another thing to understand that these negative acts have serious impact on people. This is particularly important in cultures in which there might be a belief or there might be lived experiences where, bullying, there's no such thing as bullying. That's just us being tough. It's tough love. Well, that might be your definition, but that's not necessarily everyone else's definition. So ensuring that people who participate in your educational intervention and specifically in cognitive rehearsal understand that there are consequences which have negative impacts is critical. They need to learn also about work factors that contribute to this behavior. It's not enough to point out to someone, hey, you're being a bully. You have to also understand what are the structural components of your institution that are enabling and creating an environment where this behavior has been seen as acceptable and or continues on. Without the three components, the step one can be ineffective. So one of the things that's very important with cognitive rehearsal is learning and rehearsing specific phrases to use in bullying situations. And this is deeply rooted in some of the neurological research. The idea is that as you practice something, it becomes ingrained, sort of like muscle memory, but for your brain. So as you're learning and identifying these situations, you also learn what you can do to step in and say something, whether that's you as the victim or you as a bystander. There are different trainings for different situations. And oftentimes when you are in this rehearsal, it is important to acknowledge that sometimes that can bring things up. So when we're designing this, we want it to be inclusive and supportive. Acknowledge that people who have experienced this might be uncomfortable, but it is important for us to give people tools, and this is one of the tools. The next step in cognitive rehearsal is to rehearse those responses in preparation and to give people tools. In the nursing literature, the most common tool is a card, which you would hang on your badge. Sometimes that's not appropriate, and some of the literature from the nursing interventions, they have actually put things such as posters and tents on surfaces. So as I mentioned, we have the bystander intervention. So bystander interventions are not about just expecting people who are experiencing negative acts to stand up for themselves. It's also about creating a culture in which we hold others accountable and which others feel comfortable stepping in and saying, this is not okay. This is not the environment that we want to work in. So again, having those written policies and guidelines and make them accessible. It is so important that you don't just throw it into, some drive that's hidden in the middle of cyberspace somewhere. They need to be out there, they need to be seen, and they need to be findable by the people in your institution. Again, framing bullying as hurting as more as the individual. This is especially critical when you're doing a bystander intervention. And it can be important so that everyone understands that sometimes when you have suffered a lot of these negative acts, your response isn't necessarily going to be to say something. Even when you do cognitive rehearsal, that can be really hard and it can shut you down. So having that bystander come in and give you those words or help you with those words can be critical. Again, it's about building a culture and a system in which bullying and lateral and horizontal violence are not acceptable, and giving the people tools to help make it so that the workplace evolves and it becomes better. So again, going back to the role of managers, which we will get more into later, it is also important that promises and support are actually kept and provided. You need to ensure that there is protection against retaliation, and you want to empower both victims and bystanders. In your trainings, it should be something that you talk about, and it's also important to provide examples of not only bullying, but also appropriate ways to intervene. You don't want to create a situation where it becomes a mobbing issue. You want to give people tools that fit the desired workplace culture you're hoping to build through these interventions. and also hold bullies and bystanders accountable. It is not enough to say, oh, everyone knows what it is, I'm not going to intervene. You need to hold people in the library accountable for the actions that they have, including not stepping in and not giving people the tools they need. So yes, those are the two most common interventions we highly encourage people to consider. If they do this, please publish about it. If you haven't done it yet, please consider something like this for your institution. And next, we are going to talk about manager roles. Go ahead, Megan. Thank you.
So you as a manager, your role is very important in creating a nonviolent workplace. You are uniquely situated to make changes in your institution. Looking through the chat, I've seen that there's been various comments about, what if the negative acts are coming from up above? What if they're coming from the direct reports? It really depends on your situation. So you could create change within your own department. All libraries are different sizes. Some are small. Some have 10 different departments that report to even higher managers. But you as a manager can only make change within your own department, but then you can also advocate to make changes higher up. So first, be aware of what's happening in your library. So you should kind of take stock of how long have you been in your library? How long have the employees been in your library? Sorry. How long have your employees been in your library? Is there frequent turnover or absenteeism? Are you noticing that someone is routinely being excluded by other people within your department? Do you notice that there's any passive aggressive behaviors that are aimed to hurt or belittle anyone? Next, when you see an uncivil behavior, speak up. This could be calling out the behavior in the moment or calling in with the aggressor in a private setting. So for calling out, the point of that is that you want to prevent further harm from the target. So that's letting somebody know right there in the moment that their words or actions are unacceptable and will not be tolerated. You'll probably feel very uncomfortable to do that, but it's really necessary, especially to the target of the behavior, to show that you're not going to tolerate that type of behavior. And then you can call in. So calling in is having a more deeper conversation with the aggressor and trying to get them to understand from a different perspective how their actions, how their words can hurt someone. You want to try to get them to understand what impact they're having on their target. Next, report the negative acts. You really want to keep documenting as much as possible. So when you're starting documentation, it's a way for you to determine, was this a one-off or is this ongoing behavior that we need to either refer back to the policies that we have in place, if we have a policy in place? Do I need to send that person for additional training? Do I need to get HR involved? Do we need to get an ombudsman involved? So having that documentation and documenting all of that behavior is very important. And lastly, showing support. So reaching out to the target of the negative acts. And this might, depending on how prevalent the negative behaviors have been in your library, the target may be hesitant at first because they may feel that any sort of reporting has been pushed under the rug before, so they may not feel comfortable coming to you. But when you see it, make sure that you know that they have your support. This could be that you send them information to an employee assistance program that your library offers or your institution offers. It could be sending them to specific training, something that to show them that you have their support. And then these are some of the things that managers can do. See if you already have a policy in place. If you don't have a policy in place, then see what other libraries are doing. How can you adopt similar policies that they have? You know, we're going to continue with this research. So, you know, maybe if down the future we have some sort of policy that can be adopted, but we don't currently have one, but other libraries might have it, or you might have a policy that was written 10 plus years ago and maybe it needs refreshed. Maybe within your own department, having a hands-on approach where everybody within the department can create your own policy to have input in creating policy for your department, but also making sure that the policy that you're putting in place, that everyone is aware of the policy. Next, fund training. So discover what professional development opportunities are out there. Could it be something that your whole department goes to training for? Or could it be that you send certain people to, or you as a manager, you can send yourself to, and then come back and relate what you learned to your employees? And lastly, hold your employees accountable. So if you have this policy in place, make sure that they follow the policy. Make sure that everyone is being held accountable and that you document any ongoing behavior. And also remember that you need to hold yourself accountable in addition to your employees. So make sure that you're not allowing, contributing, or benefiting from that type of culture within your library.
Part of holding yourself accountable is to educate and train yourself. You know, y'all are in leadership positions, so that means that it's up to you to keep current and to, quite frankly, make sure that you are in a position where you can be a force for good in your library. So bullying evolves. It evolves with societal expectations, cultural norms, and technology. You can't just do this one time and then 10 years from now be like, oh no, it didn't work. No, you have to continuously make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on and what's available in the literature. And again, y'all, if you're doing this, please publish so that we continue to educate ourselves. And it's not enough to do a single intervention. Interventions must be done habitually. This work is not something that's a one-off and done. It is something that you must incorporate into your institution and into your institutional culture. That means that it is something that y'all should be thinking about constantly. It's something that should not be just brought up once a month, or sorry, once a year. It's something that should be in every aspect of what you do. Managers can use the available research as a starting point. We've hopefully provided you with some good starting point references and a good place to begin where you can go forward and work on developing specific goals and hopefully interventions for your specific institution. And it's important to also remember you can include outside partners, right? If you're in the academic library, there are many departments and many experts at your institution that might be able to provide some insight that maybe your library and your stated goals could benefit from. And also when we talk about understanding what's going on in your library, it's particularly for managers, it's important to understand that you might be at that tip of that tower and you might not be fully aware of what's going on outside your tower and your nice little office. It's very important to talk to people, and more importantly, to listen and hear what the people in your library are saying, and to acknowledge and appreciate that even if you don't want to believe that it's going on, that what people are expressing to you is their lived experiences, and those lived experiences have weight and value. As management, as people who are in positions of powers, it is, in my opinion, your obligation to do this and to create a culture in which negative acts are unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Now, I also want to take a moment here to specifically point out that for BIPOC librarians, this is a whole nother level. We do not have time to go fully into that. I see that Katrina Davis Kendrick is here. Thank you so much. Her work is amazing. Y'all should check her out. Also, Jenessa Alabi, she's done some great work on this. And again, listen and understand that for people who are BIPOC, this is a whole nother level. It is on top of other things. It is up to you as management and leadership to educate yourself on what is going on and to hold yourself accountable for these experiences and acknowledge that they are the lived and real experiences if people feel comfortable enough to even share them with you. And if they don't, it is up to you to create a culture in which that happens. So thank you for my soapbox.
It's very hard to follow Rachel with something as fun as bibliographic references, but I will take this task. There is really fantastic research on bullying, whether it is lateral, whether it is horizontal between managers in different situations. It's out there. What works for me isn't going to work for you, but we need you to know there's a lot out there. Maggie, we got a whole nother slide of more of these references. That being said, I'm going to pop in just a slide or two with something we wanted to shout out as well. So stay tuned.
And, I see a lot of people asking about next steps, a lot of people saying, what then? We are planning on continuing this work to develop an educational intervention that will be able to be administered online, asynchronously. We will be requiring a pre and post test of the intervention. You know how we love to test things. So keep an eye on ALA listservs as well as other professional listservs to hear when that intervention is going to be available.
And we did want to take a moment. The CALM conference has done amazing work on next generation land acknowledgements, but we wanted to take a moment to identify Native anti-bullying efforts. This research isn't just done in our institutions, it's being done throughout the country and throughout Native lands. If you are working with individuals from grades 4 to 12, if you have exposure to them, please know that Native individuals experience more bullying by far than almost every other group. This resource is called Everyday Native. It's a resource for teachers and librarians, specifically geared towards language levels and the educational needs of grades 4 to 12. It includes photographs, poems, videos, background information, interpretation methods, different questions and ideas, and external sites that are providing really valid, really important resources so that misconceptions of Native culture aren't adding on to the bullying faced by these populations. So we did want to shout that one out and make sure you have a chance to check it out as well. There are also many other resources on bullying. If you work at Palm Beach State University, we want to say thanks for your LibGuide. It's amazing. It is a very, very comprehensive guide to all of the literature published on bullying in libraries. I know you've heard us say there's not a lot. We're talking about there's not a lot of validated measurements, qualitative, quantitative going on. However, there are guides, there are anecdotal accounts, and it's important that you're in tune with those as well. StopBullying.gov and workplacebullying.org are also bigger, high-level sites that can help with resources on bullying, no matter what level that is happening at. That being said, we got to leave time for questions. We wanted to give a shout out. These slides are from SlidesGo. Thanks for the compliments on them. Also, thanks to NBC, Paramount, Universal for giving open access to using their gifts throughout this. That said, that's what we've got for you. What can we help answer? Back at y'all.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Megan, Rachel, Maggie, and Jenessa. And we do have some time for questions, and there's quite a lot. So we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. So please don't forget to upvote, because that is how we're going to pick the questions. So the first one is from Carolyn. How do you suggest middle managers and library heads who are bullied by their direct reports, colleagues, and/or library administrators? And they say they've lived all three situations. And Carolyn, I think, also added in about a typo, but so I'll just add it in here. But what can people bullied by managers do other than report to HR or leave their job?
So there's two questions in there, and I want to make sure that I address both. And please feel free to jump in, y'all. So there is not a lot of good quality evidence on ways that managers can address bullying coming from below. There is some in the in the nursing research. However, as our research question wasn't as focused on that, we did not incorporate them into our analysis. What I remember for them indicates that a lot of that has to do with the particular culture of the institution. So of course, any intervention that you do is going to really need to be specific to your particular institution. But the cognitive rehearsal education seemed to be kind of effective with that. It helps also to develop an understanding that policies are for everyone, not just for people who aren't management. That helps to build an understanding that it's not something that is from the top down. It is all levels. It spreads up and down and all around. And then the second question was what to do if you're being bullied from up below and you're in middle management. Again, that's really difficult. It is really hard if you're in middle management and you're getting it from all sides. For things that you can do that don't involve leaving your job, again, the literature doesn't have a lot of great examples of this, particularly in libraries. What we've seen in libraries is like, well, you got one option, bye-bye. Hopefully that won't always be the case. Again, I would suggest thinking about doing some cognitive rehearsal for yourself so that you can hopefully build those neurological pathways so that when that does occur to you, you find yourself with more tools. Building relationships and forming support groups is very important. If you can't do that within your institution, it's highly recommended that you consider going outside your institution.
And one thing that we saw in a lot of the interventions that we looked at, there were interventions aimed at nursing students. So maybe this is something where the LIS programs talk about this topic in the programs so that, you know, if you have a library administrator, you could talk to them about their behavior, you could document their behavior, you could try offering different types of suggestions for professional development. I think it's more difficult to try to change someone's behavior that's above you. I think as a manager, you can help with some of these educational interventions or cognitive rehearsal training. But, you know, I think for LIS educators, for the different LIS programs, that this could be a topic that they discuss in their classes. And, you know, I remember taking class on library management. I don't remember talking about bullying or incivility. So this could be one of the topics that they talk about in that sort of class to prepare future managers of dealing with these sorts of incidents in their libraries.
And I'll just add on to all of this. Again, we're reflecting on this EVP perspective. Let's look at our organizations. Sometimes in these instances, we need to do self-assessments. What power do we have? What power do the other people have? How can we meet in the middle with what our roles and our experiences are giving us in order to make effective change? Maybe that means, hey, I have the power in a strategic planning task force to talk about this more. Maybe we need to talk about bullying on a bigger level. Maybe that means, hey, I'm planning the staff retreat. I'm going to bring this up, or I'm going to bring in a speaker. And it means taking a good look at your own biases, taking a look at the biases of others, and doing what you can to eradicate those through other types of training. We've mentioned bystander intervention training, microaggression training. Maybe if your institution doesn't want to talk about bullying, maybe that word is scary, or people are defensive, or they're accusatory. Maybe we need to approach it from some of those other angles that some of our solutions from nursing have brought up again and again. Bringing it up in different ways, still having that training, having that toolkit in your pocket ready to go is only going to help the institution in the long run. But also we want to acknowledge that causing this change can take a lot of time. A lot of the time it's systemic, and a lot of the time the power we have is a little bit surface level.
Great, thank you so much for that. So our next question is from an anonymous attendee. The idea of incivility can push up against concepts of professionalism. I'm interested in how to manage repeated incivility while being aware of how these terms and norms can be weaponized against those from underrepresented backgrounds.
So, great question. That is something to consider. There are different cultural norms and different expectations for, what is politeness based on an individual's background and experiences. I do think that's there's a couple of interesting articles out there that I've seen talking about how to create a more inclusive environment. A lot of it really has to do with establishing norms for your institution. Right? When you're designing your policy, that's why getting that buy-in and feedback from the people on all levels of your institution is critical. Because if, for example, someone wants to make sure that an aspect of their experience is reflected in that, creating a safe and supportive environment for them to express that in the development of the policy is going to be key. It is also very important, again, for y'all to do your own research, right? Like, we are librarians. If there's one thing that we should be able to do, it's look stuff up. So it's not up to your staff to teach you some of this stuff. It is up to you as someone who can implement the beginning of this policy to go out and do some reading, right? As we mentioned, we have some amazing people in this very presentation who have done amazing research on this and who can give you the background and the knowledge you need to at least ask good questions and to understand that it is not okay to put unpaid extra labor on people from historically marginalized groups to make sure that your policy is inclusive. Again, getting that group buy-in is great, but make sure that it's equitable and fair.
And if I could just add in, creating an environment where some of that feedback on your policy forming can be done without maybe having to provide that input to your direct supervisor. Maybe you can provide that input anonymously. Maybe there are different avenues where you can provide what is considered a norm in your experience or what your cultural background dictates. Providing these safe channels to express that is really key here, because when we're talking about the weaponization of cultural norms, having feedback being given in a public forum can be a really scary thing, and it can create a situation that is ripe for mobbing to occur. So you want to be really intentional with designing these feedback experiences to make sure that you're accounting for situations that may lead to increased abuse.
And I just want to add in what we've been saying. Be aware of your perspective in this situation and the biases that you bring. You might be able to, feel like I did it. It's the most inclusive policy, but you're only one person wearing probably many hats, but not all the hats. If you're able, there's some really great research on bringing in sensitivity groups to review your policies, to look at what you're trying to do. A lot of the time, the onus for inclusivity, diversity, equity work can be on our BIPOC colleagues who are being asked to fix the problems that dominant groups have created. And so we want to make sure that we're compensating for that labor, that we are taking those extra steps, and that's just part of what we're doing to make sure inclusivity is there, and that we're not asking the people who are going to be predominantly impacted by these policies to also fix them ahead of time.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to say one more, hoping that we can keep it to like 2.5 minutes so we can do the wrap up. But Katrina Davis Kendrick has put in, creating policies in low morale environment is difficult because the bullying group often will need to give up power, and faculty status/tenure complicates this endeavor. How does this policy work begin with these long-standing dynamics in ECO?
I keep jumping in first. Does anyone else want to go first?
I was going to unmute just to say that I know exactly what Rachel's about to say. Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So excellent question. Thank you so much. The evidence for this indicates, again, we're pulling from the nursing literature. So someday we hope to have librarian-based literature to pull from, indicates that oftentimes what you want to do is start with the trainings, right? Oftentimes the trainings that have been offered in the nursing literature are volunteer first, right? So it's always, okay, so people who are passionate about this take this on. And then over time, they slowly, hopefully, start to change the culture. This does become problematic if, for example, in one of our studies, I believe it was almost 40% of the people participated left before the long-term follow-up. So it's not a perfect system, but ideally you would have this cohort that is given the skills and the training that develops the shared language. And then you'd bring in another cohort and another cohort, and you start to make this something that becomes part of the culture. That gives you a little bit more of a foundation from which to build these policies. I think it is often something that we see in academia where we're like policy first, evidence later. We're suggesting that we utilize the evidence-based practice framework where you get the evidence first and then you develop a policy based on that evidence. And those trainings can become opportunities for people in leadership to listen and hear about experiences and to collect the data they need to start the work on the policy and to hopefully, again, this is hopefully, build in the structure they need to create a supportive environment for future policy changes.
And I think that question is really impactful because it's identifying how our traditional policy creation processes disproportionately advantage those who might be with the most power, the fewest reasons to address bullying as addressed before. So one thing we need to do is we need to look at how our policy creation processes might need to be shaken up a little bit for these instances and for interpersonal things where we need people on an even playing field going in as much as possible. So maybe look at your policy making processes. Is it people in a room just shouting loudly over top of each other, and how we can break that up in this specific instance?
I'd also like to say that the policies that, again, are available through the available research can be used as this is our, our little baby policy. We're going to grow it and nurture it based on the needs of this particular institution. It is a living document. It is, again, not a one and done. This is a long-term, hard, intense kind of labor that we need to do to create environments where librarians are going to thrive. And quite frankly, where we can see some people who maybe have historically not been welcomed feel welcomed and like they're part of the library. So again, thank you so much for the question. Super important, super impactful. But I do think we need to acknowledge that the policy cannot be developed in a vacuum. We utilize, as Jenessa mentioned, the evidence-based practice framework. So grab what's available, grow it, improve it, and continuously improve and change.
Great. I think it's a great place to end. So thank you again to Megan, Rachel, Maggie, and Jenessa for answering those questions and for the great presentation. It clearly has resonated with so many people. Before we close the session, just like to point out the evaluation survey that was posted in the chat, and it's also through your Schedule. And I'm sure the presenters would appreciate the feedback. And it's labeled feedback survey that is directly above the session description and Schedule. And thank you so much for all of the wonderful attendees who are so active on both the Q&A and in the chat. It's always so affirming to see. So we hope you enjoy the presentation and have a great rest of your conference.